Hey y'all, your OS reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the TOZO S5. This is a entry-level smartwatch that only sells for around $50 with discounts at checkout, and that's impressive because it touts a AMOLED display, meaning it's quite vibrant and saturated, and also touts pretty long battery life, lasting upwards of 30 days before you have to recharge it again, because it is running on a more lightweight operating system compared to something like Android Wear or an Apple Watch. This is more like a fitness tracker that has a slightly larger screen more than anything else. But if all you need is simple timekeeping, checking basic notifications, and tracking stats like your heart rate and number of steps, it might be sufficient. Pretty impressive that OLED screen watches have come down so dramatically in cost over the past year or two. It has a built-in microphone as well for answering calls. However, it is Bluetooth only, so you have to be connected to your phone as opposed to having Wi-Fi or cellular built in. Some other slight compromises here include no built-in GPS, although you are able to use connected GPS from your phone side if you're trying to track your route when running outdoors, but it will be counting your steps as well as heart rate second per second during those exercise sessions. So features aren't anything we haven't seen before, but it just presents it in a pretty elegant package for an entry-level wearable. There's also SpO2 for blood oxygen monitoring in addition to sleep tracking, and you can of course see more stats when you sync the information over to your phone, compatible with both iOS and Android. Also, for those unfamiliar, TOZO is a brand that is perhaps slightly more well known for their headphones, including wireless buds, which have become quite popular over the past few years as a rival to brands like Anker's Soundcore, as well as QCY and Baseus. So it is rather curious to see them branching out into now making wearables as well. We'll have to see whether this is any good. Some of the specs are reiterated again on the side, such as 100 sports that you're able to label when tracking them, as well as the IP68 water resistance rating. So it should survive splashes, rain, as well as maybe a light shower, but it won't really be as water resistant as more premium smartwatches that have something like 5 ATM. So just keep in mind that you shouldn't be wearing this one going diving. If you want that added durability, then you're probably going to have to pay more for a more rugged smartwatch. Regardless, inside of the packaging, we have, of course, the smartwatch itself, a silicone strap, as well as the charging cable that's using magnetic pogo contacts. That being said, if you have certain features like 24/7 monitoring turned on, the battery life will be a little bit shorter, but even so, it will be around 2 weeks at the minimum. So a closer look at the hardware here, I have to admit that, again, TOZO have done a pretty good job on the design. The bezel size is actually quite minimal for a $50 watch. Blacks here are quite inky with pretty generous viewing angles and some slight accents on the sides, with a 2.5D curve on the glass, making swipes feel a little bit more responsive. The sides of the watch are also crafted out of aluminum alloy, giving it a nice heft, even though it's not too bulky or large, and located on the right-hand spine are two keys. The top one can be pressed once to pull up the full list of applications, whereas the bottom one is a shortcut to enter a sports tracking session. The strap itself is basic, but still feels comfortable on the wrist, even for a couple of days of continuous wearing. And then on the very back here, we have the loudspeaker, microphone, as well as the SpO2 heart rate monitors, and also the charging contacts. The straps, of course, can be removed if you want to customize it with a different design. And as far as the UI is concerned, it's also quite familiar. You can long press for a couple of seconds to change the watch dial. A couple are built in here by default, and all shows off the vibrancy of the OLED screen quite well. There's also a haptic vibration motor that will buzz when you get an incoming notification and as you are navigating around the UI at times. So here's a few other examples. We can swipe down to access a quick shortcut for functions like the brightness. Now there is no ambient light sensor, so this is all done manually, but even at the maximum level here, it seems decent if there's a bit of sunlight hitting on the screen. A couple of other shortcuts include a do not disturb mode, as well as a raise to wake function that will turn the screen on whenever you flick it up to see the time. And under more advanced settings, you can also change how many seconds before the screen will time out to consume less power, as well as what they label as a quote-unquote always on time. But this label is actually a little bit deceiving because unlike other always on screen smartwatches that you have on more premium models, it actually turns off after say 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And during that 5 or 10 minutes, the screen here will basically not time out. It remains at the same brightness level as always. But once the 5 or 10 minutes is up, it will then still go into a completely black screen, as opposed to on other always-on modes where it just shows a more minimalist style clock, so you don't have to even wake it up to still see the time. So again, it's not a true always-on mode, but rather it's kind of a extending the screen from timing out for 5 or 10 minutes. Hopefully they'll bring out a true always-on mode though, perhaps in a software update or in a next generation model. Interestingly, TOZO also allows you to change the time manually if desired, even though when you sync it with your smartphone, it kind of gets automatically updated as well. There's also a power saving mode that will turn off some of the continuous tracking functions if you are a little bit further away from a charger, as well as the ability to change the all application menu drawer. It'll look something like this, and I have to say TOZO have done a decent job at optimizing the UI. It actually feels pretty smooth as you're navigating around, as you can tell, which is an area that historically budget watches tended to have a bit more lag and delay, but this actually feels as smooth as on some more premium models. And the final option is called Grid View, so this will now look something like this, showing the icons but not necessarily the labels for what they correspond to, but you see a little bit more at a glance. Otherwise, we can swipe up to take a look at any incoming notifications from social media, calls, and text messages that will be synced over from the phone, although you don't have the ability to reply on this particular watch. You can just see them at a glance. The carousel widgets can otherwise be navigated both on the left and the right sides, so this one here is going to be continuous heart rate that will take a measurement roughly every 5 minutes or so throughout the entire day, telling you your averages as well as highs and lows. The next one here is going to be your weather currently. Next tab over is going to tell you your sleep in terms of duration. You can of course see more data when we sync it over to the phone. And the next one here is a ring that tells us our daily goal, how many steps and calories percentage-wise we've reached. Now we can also tab again on the full list of applications to see a little bit more info. For instance, if we jump into sleep here, we can actually swipe up now to also check out the breakdown of light versus deep versus REM, as well as a sleep quality score. So if you wanted to check out a little bit more detail, you can jump into those under the full list of apps, including heart rate zones as well. Now, one thing I will say here is for the blood oxygen monitoring, unlike the heart rate, it's actually not continuously done throughout the day. You have to manually take a test by tapping on this function. So again, if you go into the full application, you can check out a little bit more data corresponding to things like weather for a couple of days ahead, compared to the main carousel there that only shows you a snapshot for the current day. And finally, you can also bring up a dialer pad if you're trying to make calls from your wrist if you are connected to your phone via Bluetooth. Some other quick shortcut widgets here include for timer, as well as alarm clock that you're able to set directly on the watch itself. A flashlight function will turn the entire screen white to illuminate objects a little bit better in the dark. Search your phone is basically going to ring an alarm on your phone if you are connected by Bluetooth, plus the ability to play, pause, and skip tracks if you are currently listening to music on your phone, although there is no offline music storage on the watch itself. Last but not least, a quick peek into some of the other exercise and sports sessions you're able to track, from dancing, yoga, hiking, cycling, so on and so forth. We can also set up some targets or goals that we want to reach, after which point it's going to count the entire duration, your pace, distance. Again, heart rate will be tracked second per second in a little bit more granularity. So the companion app here is called TOZO Wear, and it connects once you have Bluetooth and location services turned on. It's a pretty basic app, but at least you're able to quickly gauge, again, the activity and stats with a little bit more detail if you tap inside, such as specific points in the day that you were a little bit more active, distance converted, whether you reached your goal or not, and also take a look at your historical averages. Similar fashion, if we tap on the other kind of data points, including heart rate, again, you can see the fluctuations a little bit more. And it does also track your heart rate during sleep as well, plus your heart rate variability throughout the day. There's not too much personalized insights here though, like more expensive smartwatches from Fitbit or Garmin, providing you with more recommendations of how to act on the data points, but it's really just giving you a number here for you to then interpret yourself. But at the very least, it is easy enough to read. Down below here, we also have the aforementioned sleep data that we're also able to take a look at. And for a budget smartwatch, I have found the sleep tracking accuracy to be surprisingly good. It's an area where $50 watches in the past have tended to struggle with. For example, if you're taking naps, this watch can also track them separately under the nap section during the daytime. So it's not picky at all in terms of when you start sleeping. It just automatically tracks it throughout the day 24/7, which is, again, pretty neat. So surprisingly, sleep tracking, including heart rate as well as nap detection automatically, is one of the highlights on the S5 smartwatch. Now, similarly, when it comes to step counting, I found the data points to be also relatively accurate. When comparing it with some Amazfit smartwatches earlier, it actually gave me a comparable number within just a 5% margin of difference that I felt was good enough for a low-cost wearable like this. And TOZO have also built in some other KPIs, which will provide a snapshot of your stats and accurate during the week. In addition to, at the very top, there's also something called a wellness score. Similar to the Pi score function on Amazfit watches, it's a consolidated score that takes into account how well you're sleeping, in addition to how well you're exercising and your heart rate, rate, all of those stats are bundled together into a rating from 0 to 100. It's a nice touch on an entry-level watch that we don't usually see either. So overall, not bad, although again, certain metrics like SpO2 is manual, and also there is no stress monitoring metric on this particular watch. The second tab over here for exercise allows us to initiate a session from the smartphone, and here you can use your phone's GPS to track your route. So this will be applicable for outdoor running or cycling sessions. And then under the device tab, this is where we can take a look at our watch dials. And there's plenty of pretty attractive looking dials which are all free that are provided by TOZO, taking around a minute here to then push over to the actual watch itself. A pretty nice mix of both digital as well as analog dials for you to pick between. Here's a couple more examples. This one here is called Emerald Green, also looking pretty attractive, versus this one here is called Digital Classic. It's quite basic, but in a very minimalist style. This one here is a lot more colorful and playful. Here's another modernist-inspired design that is also quite abstract. You can also use your own custom image as a background wallpaper that can be found in the album section down below. So if we tap on one of these, for example, you're able to, again, upload your own photo. In fact, these three just provide you with slightly different default styles for how the clock here is being placed and also the font that's being used up above. Some other advanced settings include turning on and off the raise to wake function at certain times during the day, as well as what types of reminders and notifications from certain apps you want to pass over to the watch. And under health monitoring, this is where you can flick on or off the continuous 24/7 heart rate monitoring feature or turn it off to prolong the battery life. For example, if you don't need it to be activated during sleep, you can actually turn it off, and you can also turn on a heart rate warning if it goes over a certain BPM. Again, it would be nice to also have the same continuous tracking for SpO2, but it is what it is. You can also track weather data instead for a different location, add or remove certain quick widgets in terms of sports that you want to track on the watch, in addition to find the watch. This will ring an alarm and also vibrate the watch itself that we can also tap on once it is located if you are connected via Bluetooth. So overall, it's a pretty simple application, but again, does the basics well when it comes to quickly syncing over data. Maybe the only slight con would be when it comes to the watch dials, even though there's plenty of attractive looking options, you can really only push over one custom dial at a time before the next one would just rewrite over the memory. So if they perhaps gave you a little bit more built-in memory in a next generation model, you could potentially hold more custom dials without them being swapped out. But overall, again, basics here including step counting, heart rate, as well as sleep tracking, surprisingly, are all relatively accurate for a low-cost watch. So as long as you're okay with a more lightweight set of features, this is really not bad. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That has been the TOZO S5 smartwatch.